You're listening to the Fan to Fan Podcast, episode 31, and today we're talking about 1973's sci-fi adventure classic, Westworld.
How about that?
Yep.
Okay, cool. Is that too hot?
No, that sounds good. Cool. And that was so professional. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Welcome to the Fan to Fan Podcast. This is your host, Bernie Gonzalez, and I am here with friend, fan, musician, comedian, writer, and consummate Bears fan, Chad Lind. Did I get them all?
Yeah, Cubs fan, maybe more than Bears fan these days. So.
I don't blame you. And Chad, I've known you it's been a very, very long time. I mean, it's at least double digits.
Yeah, it's been a while. We used to work together.
Some of the best memories that I have were working with you.
Yeah, mine too. Working with you was an absolute blast. So
unfortunately, now we are separated by a few states. So now you reside in Washington.
Correct, Bellingham, Washington. Yes.
And you currently work at the Upfront Theater doing improv.
Yeah, improv. I also work in the tech booth, and I clean the place. So it's exciting. It's Ryan Stiles Theater from Whose Line Is It Anyways? He owns it, and he's there, fairly often. It's a super nice guy, and it's just he's from Bellingham, so he opened a theater here, and I feel really fortunate to work there. It's a great place to work.
I say, as long as I've known you, you've always been a fan of improv and comedy. So is that what brought you to that?
Yeah, definitely. I got away from kind of comedy and performing in general for a while. And I think sometime over the last couple of years, I was just like, geez, I'd like to go back to that. I thought I was pretty good at it. And I've been told numerous times that I'm not, but I'm still plugging away at it. No, it's going very well. And there's some incredible, Bellingham's only about 100,000 people, maybe even less than that. And it's between it's closer to Vancouver, British Columbia than it is to Seattle, but it's kind of in between. And so there's a lot of different places to go and perform and see things. And it has a lot of talent per capita here. There's a lot of really talented people. And
considering that you came from one of the well-known improv cities in the world, with Second City being in Chicago, because were you born in Chicago?
Yeah, I was born in Illinois. I wasn't born in the city. I was born in the suburbs, and then moved to the different suburbs to go to school and high school and stuff, and then pretty much hightailed it for the city as soon as I could.
And those of us who have grown up in Illinois and in the Chicagoland area, and I grew up in proper Chicago, there is very much a difference between living in Chicago and living in the suburbs.
Oh, yeah. Unless I can see people, there are certain suburbs that make sense for younger, creative people to live in. Evanston is one of them. But if you're young and you're creative, you really should live close to the city. You don't want to get stuck out in Naperville trying to be funny.
That's true. Nothing against the funny people in Naperville, but they should make their way east.
Right, all four of them. Right, exactly.
They can carpool. All right, so speaking of young people, Chad, we're going to go back to 1973. And I will ask, where did you find yourself in 1973?
I was a very young boy. I think I was, 5 or 4? Just kind of running around, probably. I have no memories from back then, so...
That's okay. I'm going to try to refresh some memories here as we talk about 1973 in film. And I like to do this just because it's a little context, and some of the movies, especially as I start rattling them off, I'm sure you'll identify with some of them and think, wow, those are great or not so great. But some of the classics, now classics, movies like The Sting, American Graffiti, Live and Let Die, Enter the Dragon, The Way We Were, Serpico, and Mean Streets. So that's all 1973.
Wow.
Another big year for horror, 73, with The Exorcist, The Wicker Man, and The Crazies.
Well, The Wicker Man is a great movie.
It is. It's definitely a cult classic. And no, we are not talking about the Nicolas Cage film for those that might be confusing. No, those are not easily confused. It's kind of like this very weird... I don't know. It's at any point you're watching it, you wonder if you have had any, hallucinogens, because it's so out there.
Right, exactly. And it's also that guy, the lead actor is the guy who played the Equalizer.
Yes, yes.
Back, and he's so good because he's so subtle in Wicker Man, and it has like that weird sort of really claustrophobic feeling, strange twist at the end where you're like, oh yeah. And it's I just remember that being, I haven't seen it for a while, but I really liked that movie.
We might have to do an episode on The Wicker Man now.
Yeah, definitely.
And 73, also some great sci-fi movies: Battle for the Planet of the Apes, Fantastic Planet, and Soylent Green. Pretty solid films in there. And
those are very solid.
So amongst all of these movies, now we have Westworld, which was what we're talking about today. So Westworld comes out November 21st, 1973. It's a PG-rated science fiction Western thriller. Comes in at 88 minutes, distributed by MGM. Budget for the film was a bit over $1 million, and it made $10 million, which, all things being equal, pretty respectable.
Yeah.
Synopsis for the movie, for those that have not seen it: amusement park robots malfunction, start killing visitors. And it was written and directed by Michael Crichton.
A graduate of Harvard Medical School, Crichton left medicine to become a writer. And become one he did, with such bestsellers as The Andromeda Strain and The Terminal Man.
Are we rolling?
The first was made into a motion picture box office hit, and the second is currently completing production. It comes as small surprise, then, that Michael Crichton has decided to direct a movie of his very own.
Action!
So he gets inspired to write the film after he has a trip to Disneyland, where he sees the Pirates of the Caribbean ride, and he's impressed by all the animatronic characters. And originally he's going to write it as a book, but decides to make it a screenplay because on one of the making of featurettes on the Westworld DVD, he talks about how he started visualizing his book and felt that it would work well in a screenplay format. So it was his first theatrical feature. So MGM releases the movie, but they have this pretty bad reputation of being difficult to work with directors like Stanley Kubrick, Sam Peckinpah, and Robert Altman, who had complained about, quote unquote, as I found, unreasonable pressure, arbitrary script changes, inadequate post-production, and cavalier recutting of the final film. So if you're a director, I'm sure all of these things are, you're just running the opposite way of MGM.
Yeah, that's it also doesn't surprise me to hear that. That's the first that I'd heard of that with MGM. But this movie felt tinkered with.
Yeah, so initially they have only $1 million. They give them another $250,000 to finish post-production. And the studio was so difficult to work with that these actors for Westworld were not signed until 48 hours before shooting of the film actually began.
That's hilarious, especially because you've got James Brolin, Richard Benjamin, and it's Dick Van Patten, right?
It is Dick Van Patten. You got it.
Yeah, like all those three kind of make up the main part of the cast, other than the guy who I think played one of the doctors in $6 Million Man.
Oh, Alan Oppenheimer, who's the chief supervisor.
Yes, the chief supervisor. It's just amazing that you, like, nowadays you'd want to nail down Brolin and Benjamin at least 4 or 5 years in advance.
And at that point, I don't know that Brolin had done much. So he plays the character John Blaine, and he ends up later on in Capricorn 1, Amityville. I had to remember that he is in Pee-wee's Big Adventure.
That was the president again. I've got to steal back the X-1 before the Soviets find the secret compartment containing the microfilm. The future of the free world is riding on this one.
Oh, that's right.
And for the Community fans out there, he does play Jeff Winger's estranged father.
Yes. Yeah.
But before that, I don't believe he'd been in many films. Richard Benjamin, who plays Peter Martin in Westworld, he's been in Woody Allen's Deconstructing Harry, but he's better known as a director. He directed The Money Pit and Little Nikita.
Yeah, he was also in Love at First Bite. And that was a really funny movie. That was one of the movies that I first saw when I was a kid, like in the theater. He had some very funny moments in that movie. Benjamin basically plays Van Helsing via being but it's a very like nebbish Manhattan-y sort of take on Dracula. It's pretty funny.
Yul Brynner, the gunslinger. So 10 Commandments, The King and I, Anastasia, and then of course Magnificent Seven. And in the movie Magnificent Seven, he played Chris Adams. So in this movie, he plays the gunslinger, and I think it's pretty obvious that the appearance for the gunslinger very much inspired by the character he played in The Magnificent Seven.
Yeah, I'd say for sure.
And of course, because I don't want to forget, you mentioned Dick Van Patten from Eight Is Enough, Spaceballs, and he was also in Soylent Green, so he had a busy 1973.
Wow.
And let's not forget Majel Barrett, who is Gene Roddenberry's widow, who played the whorehouse madam in Westworld as well.
Yes.
Last time you saw this film before you saw it for the podcast was how long ago?
Oh my God. I want to say it was the early 80s.
Okay, so let's talk about the first time you saw this movie.
I used to have these sleepovers on the weekends with my friend Brian. And basically the main point of doing them was to always to kind of just tell our parents or tell like his parents or my parents that we were gonna watch a movie and then play like Stratomatic baseball and then go to bed. And when the parents would go to sleep, we would always have gotten a movie because we knew somebody down at some freaking guy at the corner store, the video store, who would give us like a scarier movie than our parents would let us watch. And so Westworld was one of the ones that we watched, after dark. And I remember thinking back then, oh my God, this is so cool. Oh, this is amazing. Like these concepts are so deep and so like, oh, it's just, it really is like kind of almost catered to that age group to a certain extent. Because it's like the things that they bring up, the themes, while, somewhat prescient for today, are not really well examined.
It's very cursory. It's like they throw out a lot of stuff and they just kind of told the audience, deal with it. And how old were you at the time when you saw it?
What was I? I was like 13 years old.
I mean, that's like you said, that's a perfect age to probably start responding to some of these big themes that they just like very quickly. It's like, hey, by the way, here are these questions about whether robots have, the same rights as humans and about technology and all these and playing God. But, no, let's just keep moving on with the plot. We're not going to sit down and talk about it. Let's just keep going. We have a lean 88-minute movie to go.
But so for such a lean movie, it is only 88 minutes long. There is so much fat in this movie. Like there are the scenes, like the fight scenes in the bar. The fight scene in the bar goes on it feels like it goes on somehow for like 35 minutes in an 88-minute movie. There's so much stuff they could have trimmed to explore the themes more deeply. I just found it really interesting that they didn't.
Let me do a quick little overview of the plot for those that have not seen it. And then we're going to dig into this because, like I said before, this is probably the most notes I've ever had for any episode because it was just thought diarrhea. I'm like, oh, and then what about this? And what about virtual reality? And what about the sequels? And so, all right, so let me just do a quick overview, get this out of the way.
Crichton's Westworld takes place in the imagined future. People have become bored with the standard 2-week package tour of Europe. They want more from their vacation. Those who can afford it go to Westworld, a giant amusement complex for adults.
So the movie takes place in 1983, which only takes place 10 years after the movie's release in 1973. So in 73, this is what they felt the future was going to be like.
Right.
The film opens up with a TV commercial for a theme park, which looks just like a commercial that you'd see on broadcast TV at the time. And after this little commercial that introduces what Delos, which is the name of the theme park, what it is about, we're introduced to these two kind of well-to-do yuppie tourists, Peter Martin, played by Richard Benjamin, John Blaine, played by Brolin, and they're going to Delos on this hovercraft, a futuristic amusement park that's kind of like a satire extrapolation of Disneyland, and it's got separate theme parks within Delos. So just like Disneyland has Fantasyland, Adventureland, Frontierland, World of Tomorrow, Delos, which is located out in the desert, has 3 virtual reality areas.
The orientation on the resort will now begin.
Western World is a complete recreation of the American frontier of 1880. Here it is possible to relive the excitement and stresses of pioneer life to the fullest. This is medieval world, where we have reconstructed 13th century Europe, a world of chivalry and combat, romance and excitement. Then we have Roman world, a lusty treat for the senses in the setting of delightful, decadent Pompeii. Here the traveler experiences the sensual, relaxed morality that existed at the peak of the imperial Roman Empire.
And each world kind of recreates those specific eras for the guests, and they're immersed completely in there. So they're dressing, they're eating the food of that era in accommodations of that era, and the guests are interacting with these lifelike robots that can talk, and they're interacting with almost these scripted adventures that are going on. And in Westworld, for example, there's bank robberies and all these different things. And that also includes having sex with these robots. So this is my, yeah. We'll get there, Chad. So this is Martin's first visit, as we find out, to Delos, but it's Blaine's second visit. And they are paying $1,000 a day to be at this resort. So during the first half of the movie, they're just going to this old West frontier town in Westworld. And it's basically like two buddies like walking through a Western movie, completely aware of all the tropes, like the gunfights, the saloon brawls, the bank robberies. And at times, especially with some of the music, it's almost played for like comedic effect.
Yeah.
Eventually, along the way, drama ensues. The attractions systematically stop working. A robot snake bites Blaine. Robots in Roman world and medieval world start failing. And then you have all these technicians, engineers, mechanics. They're in this sort of underground container, and they're told by the chief supervisor, who played by Alan Oppenheimer. So he's telling them, hey, we got to shut down the park. Too many robot failures. But of course, board of director disagrees because they feel we're going to lose money. Robot chaos escalates. The robots start killing the guests. They have to try to do something about it, but the main control room is locked down. And you've got good old Martin and Blaine, who after a nice bar fight and waking up after a night's bender, they challenge Yul Brynner's robot to a gunfight. And before, Martin, Richard Benjamin's character, has killed him twice. This time around, not so much the gunslinger wins because he actually shoots Blaine. And then we have Martin kind of going through the different worlds, eventually kind of getting into a final conflict with the gunslinger. So I'm just kind of going through this stuff because I'm just like, all right, let's get to the fun part, because the movie is very much a product of its time, but there is so much stuff here. So I'll give it to you, Chad, after watching this movie, having watched this movie after so long.
Well, the first thing I noticed was that for me, nothing was explored deeply enough for me to give this movie credit for bringing it up. There wasn't even like it wasn't this. It started for me with the concept of that TV commercial at the beginning. That thing would have been a third as long as it was. It was just all of these people walking up who had just gotten back from Delos, talking about their experience.
What is your name?
Gardner Lewis. Just got back from Westworld.
Tell us how you liked it, Mr. Lewis.
When you played cowboys and Indians as a kid, you'd point your fingers and go bang, bang, and the other kid would lie down and pretend dead. Well, Westworld is the same thing, only it's for real.
What was the point of that? The guy, my favorite guy, was Ted Mann, who was the guy who was the sheriff for 2 weeks, which, again, makes no sense to a certain extent once you see the movie, because... yeah, whatever. So he's the sheriff. His acting in his little interview scene at the beginning is just so tone deaf. It's just fantastic.
Just to note to that one, because I thought that first part was so, like you said, way longer than it should have been. But actually, once the film was completed and Crichton was done, MGM authorized shooting some extra footage because they felt that the story wasn't clear enough. So that TV commercial at the beginning, because there was a writer's strike in Hollywood at the time, it was actually written by Stephen Frankfurt, who's a New York advertising executive. So it was basically written as an actual commercial for what would presumably be a real place.
Oh, wow.
Completely separate from Crichton, not directed by him, not even written by him.
That's really, that's interesting. And it still points to the fact that, like, I wanted this movie to be good enough that matters. but it doesn't matter because it's so poorly executed in the sense that it's just let's talk about the hovercraft. Can we talk about the hovercraft?
Oh, by all means, please.
The hovercraft is my theory is that maybe the producers of The West Wing designed the interior of Air Force One based on the hovercraft. But man, like it's a very nice hovercraft. It seems to be going. When you see that wonderful shot, the reflection of the pilot's sunglasses, reflective sunglasses, which we see numerous times, because clearly that's the artistic shot of the film. It makes it seem as if the hovercraft is going extremely fast, and maybe also it's kind of like a ride that would be very jostling. Yet when they shoot the interior shots of the patrons going to Delos, it's the smoothest ride. The camera doesn't even jiggle. So there's a weird dichotomy there. I didn't know hovercrafts, it didn't apply to the laws of physics and stuff. So that was strange. That said, also when they settle on the shot of Brolin and Benjamin sitting next to each other, there's no way I'm turning this movie off, no matter how bad it gets, because those guys. It makes so much sense what you were saying about how they were just signed right before the movie, because that's the feeling you get. You get the feeling that these two guys are young actors who, are just glad to be a part of this, and they're trying to figure out how to do the scene, and they're both very good actors. And
they're doing it with the camera rolling.
Right, exactly. Like there's a lot of weird energy in those scenes, and I was just like, I could watch this all day. Like there's so much exposition in the hovercraft scenes between the two of them. It was a weird setup.
And consider he only had 30 days to shoot the entire film, and he did a lot of cutting in camera. So he's basically pre-editing because he doesn't have enough time for the film. And like you said, so 2 days before, these two young actors don't really have time to maybe do a table reading with the rest of the cast, maybe let alone meet the rest of the cast.
Right. Yeah, that's a great point. And I'm going to rip on this film as much as I can, but also with the caveat that I watched it all the way through. I enjoyed it. And I did think that Benjamin and Brolin were really good in the movie.
Yes. Yeah, for young actors with very little probably time to prep, they did have a bit of a chemistry, and once they actually get to Westworld, I think Benjamin shines even more because he has this sort of very passive, almost stilted perspective on Westworld. He doesn't understand it. He hasn't been there like Blaine, who has. Blaine has a bit more cocksure about what he can do and what he can get away with. He's very confident about what he's going there for, and maybe Martin has all these other, trepidations about maybe being there in the first place. Because there's a part, remember when they're in their accommodations and they're second guessing, wait, we're paying $1,000 for the shitty cots above, a saloon.
Right.
And he pulls up the vase and he's looking at the bottom and he's like, oh, Julie would like looking for stuff like this, like antiquing. It's like his mind is obviously in his probably recent divorce, not in a, hey, let's dress up and play cowboys and Indians.
Right. And that's an important part of the movie that they make work. The script is no great shakes, but they sell out not just in the physicality of certain things. Who wouldn't want to shoot Yul Brynner? I mean, that would be fun. So, but in those scenes, like you said, they could easily give a little like they could just like, God, this makes no sense. What are we talking about? But instead, they sell it, and they do a good job of making it seem like, at the very least, the Richard Benjamin character is someone that you can identify with a little bit.
And I think the best part about the way Benjamin plays it, when they start actually digging into Westworld and all of like the Western tropes, because you get everything: the old West frontier town, the gunfights, the saloon brawls, the bank robberies. But it's kind of like it's not the real West. I mean, it's like the West that we've seen from like The Magnificent Seven, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, The Wild Bunch, Butch Cassidy, and like John Wayne movies. It doesn't feel I don't know, this may be a poor example, but it doesn't feel as gritty and as lived in as something like HBO's Deadwood when that was released.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, all right.
That's what I was thinking also then about Roman World and all this other stuff. It was an interesting thing when they were talking about like you said, $1,000 to sleep in this, and what would $1,000 have been in 1983? I mean, it would be like $6,000 or $8,000 now. So it's a very expensive vacation they're taking. So there was a decision then made. I'm sure their sewage, they're not like going to an outhouse to take a dump out back. I'm sure in the medieval world, there's not just ditches for their, feces. But yeah, and then also like the Roman world, like what obviously these aren't, it's not completely realistic. It doesn't, you have to think about it, which you're really not supposed to do in a movie like this, I don't think. But that said, they do a good job of making it seem like, okay, you're right. Like this isn't ultra realistic. This is giving you what the consumer wants that time to be.
It's more, Roman world is more Cleopatra or Ben-Hur, Spartacus. And I'm sure like the medieval world and the little bit that we see it is more like El Cid or like the Douglas Fairbanks movies. It's not an actual medieval world.
Right. It's very Robin Hood-y, exactly.
They may be actually, they might have access to porta potties in Roman or medieval world, but you can't even get, whatever the drink that Benjamin's character orders when he goes to the bar. And then Brolin's character just kind of chastised him and said, you're getting a whiskey. But it's like, he basically is like, oh, can I get a gin and tonic? And the bartender's just looking at him like, okay, I have no clue what you're talking about because we're all in character here.
Right. Exactly. And that scene is kind of interesting also from the standpoint that it's a Western and it's about to get, they're doing this thing about violence, but it's all happening with fake violence within a film, which in itself is fake violence. So that was really interesting to watch. That scene seemed to kind of hint at it in a way that the rest of the movie really did not. but I thought that the first showdown between Richard Benjamin's character and Yul Brynner's character, I thought that was interesting. I thought that was a good scene.
Yeah, the where he's just kind of giving him the talk, and after Yul Brynner purposely, and you wonder if, and this is where we'll get into the technology part, but it's like, all right, how advanced are these robots that does he purposely pick a patron, hit him while he's about to drink just so that he spills enough, and then he can essentially create that entire back and forth to say,
you talk too much.
You say something, boy.
I said you talk too much.
I had to make me shut up.
So it either gets to the point where, the person challenges him to a gunfight outside, or in this case, he's kind of cautious and he doesn't know how to respond. And it's not until Brolin's character just keeps kind of pushing him, and he's like, kill him. But you still know that, the way Benjamin's character is looking at it, he's like, you're telling me to kill this guy. And it's almost like it's not until a little bit more coercing that finally.
Yes. And then you also see then where the discussion between, I'm always going to refer to them as their actor names just because that's the way my brain works, but where Brolin and Benjamin were talking before about all of the exposition about Benjamin's character just getting divorced and maybe he shouldn't be showing up here and what are we supposed to do, and Brolin kind of being the buddy who's already been there sort of thing. That pays off in the kind of the way that Brolin's character is just like, go shoot him. You don't have to take any of that from him. And I thought that was really cool. Like that was a natural extension from the earlier scene, which was cool.
Yeah, there's definitely like an indulgement of fantasy, like the playing dress up, the make believe. The first guy that they interview in that commercial, where he says, "Oh, basically we're playing cowboys and Indians," but there's that definitely like that theme of conquest, whether it's violence or sexual, but without repercussions. And I think it's Brolin's character that says a line,
"Boy, machines are the servant of man."
Wasn't that great?
And a definite acknowledgement of the robots' place and where they are and how they're there to serve the guest and the humans.
Yeah, there is. And that's a theme throughout. It's not really explored enough. I think it's well. The couple questions I would have. The first one would be, and I when I was discussing this movie after I had watched it, I was discussing with a friend of mine, and she said, "Chad, don't forget the theme to Mystery Science Theater 3000. It's really you should really just relax." And I was like, okay, that's a good point. Still, given what we just said about how there's no, you're not, whatever, there's a certain amount of realism to the world. There's a lot of stuff that's not tackled or brought up. Why is when the program is working correctly, when the robots are working correctly and the worlds are, still haven't gone to hell yet, why does the Yul Brynner bad guy keep showing up? It doesn't make sense that you would have to shoot the same person over and over again.
Yul Brynner's character, who then kind of inspires, I guess, James Cameron for Terminator, and I think even John Carpenter had said that it inspired Michael Myers. But it's just like, whatever it is, he becomes fascinated with Benjamin to the point where he just keeps going after him through Westworld, through Roman world and medieval world. But it's like there's no indication to think like, okay, so they go from there's a few faulty issues to robots that are not accepting advances from guests to all out like Predator.
Right.
And he's just going after him without any escalation. But I mean, that's where I think the movie, I think you said it best. There's a lot of stuff here in this movie, but I think we bring it more, we're bringing it to the movie more than it's suggesting, more than it's dealing with it. It might not even consciously be suggesting it, not to not give Crichton enough credit. There's so many things here about humans playing God and the gunslingers, Frankenstein's monster, the fact that the movie takes place in 1983 and its home computers really don't become popular until like a little later in the 1970s. So it's like, this is what they thought technology would be, so much that people could create these things and not only shoot them and not care about them, but like have sex with them. I mean, it's like, there's so much here, but like your friend said, I think,
you made the thing that I will keep coming back to is what you said about the casting and then also the budget. And it really does feel like you've got these people. Crichton's not a great author, but he's a very popular author and he can tell a story. And he's not a great filmmaker by any stretch of the imagination. But Brolin and Benjamin, young actors, you just basically get the feeling that these talented people are finding their way and winging it. And that's cool. Like, there's nothing wrong with that.
Chad and I will continue talking about Westworld in just 1 second, but in the meantime, remember you can find the Fan to Fan podcast at www.fanpodcast.com. Facebook, just search Fan to Fan Podcast. That's FAN, the number 2, FAN, or on Twitter at Fan to Fan Podcast. I'd love to hear from you, so reach out, send a message, and let me know what you think of the show. Thanks.
And now, on with the show.
And you mentioned Crichton's books. I mean, things like Congo Sphere, Jurassic Park, Lost World, Andromeda Strain. He's obviously dealing continuously with like the implications of technology, and he's always in this sort of sci-fi techno thriller landscape. But the idea of, okay, something happens, humans advanced through technology, something, whether it's in Jurassic Park, okay, so they get DNA from a mosquito, they create an amusement park, drama ensues. Now we have to deal with the problem that we created. It's like, all right, obviously Westworld just seems like a precursor to what Jurassic Park would be, but you just wonder exactly like you said, were these the seeds into Michael Crichton to a theme or a topic that he's trying to figure out.
Yeah, basically like the hubris of man seems to be very much like the thing that he does so well, of just like, these technological advances in order to make money, when they clash with the capitalism and the all that other stuff, how out of control can it get and how it can change the world. And it's fascinating. It is. You're right. I agree completely that it's basically like it's like a film student's version of Jurassic Park. 30 years earlier.
That's a good point. Absolutely. Yeah. And not just robot humans. I mean, he's got the robotic snake, and I had to go back and watch that scene where the robots are in the lab, and there is presumably a robotic like deer and a robotic coyote or dog. It's like, obviously they were able to go so far that not only did they decide to make these human robots, but they just said, no, let's go for the whole experience, and let's also bring in, these robotic animals, probably not too dissimilar from the animatronic characters he saw in Disneyland.
Right. And that's a good point. I think that it also, I just want to go to the brothel scene, because this is where I really wanted to give this movie credit, but I just can't. It's like the concept of like they're basically the robots who are prostitutes. If done a little differently, it really could have just been like, that's what men do to women who are prostitutes anyways. Like, they dehumanize them and turn them into sex robots, basically. And that's what these robots are. So it was like this thing where I was like, God, I just wish it was a little bit, like they were a little stronger with that statement, because that's a really interesting concept. Comparing prostitutes to robots who just want to have sex, because that's what men turn prostitutes into anyways.
I didn't think about it until today, because I watched the movie again last night, and I saw it about a week ago. I let it kind of marinate, wrote down a bunch of notes in the last week, thought, let me watch it one more time last night, and then the notes just kept coming, because I kept thinking, so they make these robots, and this is my theory, and you tell me how crazy it may sound. So these guests are coming to this entertainment adventure amusement park where it's in this future society, circa 1983, right, where guests are basically willing to let themselves be observed by park staff playing out these scripted scenes that include violence, sexual relations with robots, and the fact that they're doing these things in front of strangers and they're okay about it just makes me think, I wonder if sex robots in this world happened earlier, and for whatever reason, that society was okay with it. So then the natural evolution would just be, okay, so we have these robots that we use for sex, and then some advancement later, they move beyond that, and then they decide to use them in this amusement park capacity, and they just happen to use them for sex. But the real advancement are things like the gunslinger, who can go through an entire script instead of just walking in your room, maybe going through like a subset of like, oh, you're so big, or oh my God, you're so caring, or
right,
I hope you like whatever it is. But it's like they're just going through like a sequence, and I wonder if that's what this world was like.
That's fascinating. That's giving that's a great thought, and that's a much deeper thought than maybe this movie deserves.
None of that happened in the movie, but I'm telling you.
And to give you the difference between your thought process after the marination of the film's ideas for a few days and my thought process is that my question after a few days was, who cleans out the whore robots? Right? Like, why don't we see that guy's like life, like when it's coming down the conveyor belt and it gets to the final guy who's like, all right, I'll get the rag, it's like
and the whole thing is very, Henry Ford would be proud. Their assembly line system, there must be some sort of curfew where they say, all right, it's 2 a.m. Everyone has to go to bed. You cannot be out in the streets of Westworld. And then the cleanup crew comes out, grabs all of these bodies that either have been killed, and then, next thing you know, they're throwing them on this conveyor belt. And like you said, it's like, all right, well, let's, plug this guy up and let's do this. And it's like, oh, well, let's clean this one out.
Yeah. And also, like, when you're thinking about, I can only talk about the brothel thing so much because it's just so weird. Like, I like the concept that of course, in the future, that would be like the first thing robots were used for, right? So I like your thinking on that. I think that's really interesting. Of course, it would be like a male-dominated sort of like, why don't we make a robot we can fuck? But the other,
it brings up the whole morality.
Oh,
though.
Totally. It's fascinating. And but I thought, two things. First of all, the control room scene, the first big control room scene, where you see all the weird like little tape machines in the background, like doing just grids of lights, like just flashing for no reason. Like, oh yeah, that's technology.
These are the fathers to what would be Whopper in war games. If you thought Whopper wasn't big enough in that,
that's exactly right. Bigger. These are like the junior Whoppers. But the thing is that as soon as they did a pan, like he does it like I think it is a pan through the like area where the scientists are all sitting who run the park. And I swear I could, in my mind, the first thing I heard was like, hold on to your butts. Like I could just hear Sam Jackson with the cigarette dangling out of his mouth. Because that's where that whole thing, that it reminded me of that very much so. Like they know there's something wrong in the park. They know that so far they've dodged a lot of bullets. They know that it might have to be shut down at some, like there is very much that feel to it. The scene where they come out, where the workers come out with the modern day, like kind of trash truck and the things to like pick up the robots that are dead on the street and all that stuff. I thought that was a completely missed opportunity. They were trying to make it really eerie. And like you said, like that kind of morality question of just like, is this what's happening to humanity? Like what's going on, these disposable lives? But it was shot in such like a crappy way. It made me feel like I was watching like a TV show or something. I didn't like that scene. I liked the concept of it, but I really thought it was not poorly. I thought it was poorly executed.
Maybe that's the big theme of this movie, is that there's so many missed opportunities, because I'm watching that scene and I'm thinking, okay, great. Technology is pressed into service to serve and entertain humans, and they're so disposable. And look at what we've done. Nope, none of that. Right. It just looks like a documentary that they would have made for some sort of, warehouse on the south side of Chicago, where we're just like, and this is where we do the meat packing. We're over here on Halstead and Clybourne, and this is where we do. It's like, no, it's just like the camera going down the conveyor belt. Be like, is that a human? I don't know. Do we call it a human? No, I'm just watching the film. The film's not giving me any of this.
Just a lot of like grim extras, like just in trash sanitation onesies, putting like picking up bodies of robots. If you go back, if anybody wants to really kind of experience the movie the way that my brain works sometimes, is because I watched that scene twice. The first time all the way through, kind of looking at like how bad it was or how poor I thought it was, and then the second time I watched it with the sound down, and instead I put like circus music in my mind behind it, like, and it worked much better.
And it's funny. So you mentioned because when there's the chief supervisor, and he makes a point when they start figuring out that there are issues, and he says, so we're not dealing with ordinary machines here. These are highly complicated pieces of equipment, almost as complicated as living organisms. So some acknowledgement there. And then he says, in some cases, they have been designed by other computers. We don't know exactly how they work. It's almost like even the movie and the script was just kind of like, let's not really explain this. Let's just say that maybe some other computer built these computers. And, well, we don't know. Just put your arms up in the air and let's just go back to Yul Brynner.
Right. That's, that almost sounds like there was this very quick meeting like, hey, Michael, what if like computers made these robots? Oh, yeah, that's good. Like, that's the most unthought. That's a great point. That's not thought out at all. And it also is really, really like opposed to the thing that you need as someone who's watching this movie, which is that this is close to reality. It's just a slight twist. So that's a total sellout on that concept, that somehow robots are designing and making these robots and humans don't understand them. That just like ruins the premise that it's just a little bit different than life was in 1973.
So they do one thing in the movie, at least that Crichton did, and it was the first feature film to use a special effect. That was the digital image processing. So towards the end, Yul Brynner's going after Benjamin, and Benjamin pours acid on him, which, all right, if we're really going to break this down. So basically, Benjamin's just playing possum in the robot lab, and Yul Brynner, who is a robot that's not only designed to be a gunslinger, but for some reason, and I feel like this was just a tech who was just fucking around, he's like, let's give him heat vision. Let's give him infrared. It's like, Jim, we don't do that. I gave it to this guy. Let's just see what happens, you know? And then you've got Benjamin just playing possum on a bed. Meanwhile, you've got Yul Brynner just kind of walking by just to have acid spilled on his face, which is where the special effects comes in, because then after that, he's watching in this sort of pixelated perspective. But it's just like, I know we're looking at it now and we're bringing more to this movie, but it's like, wow, you guys have one of the first visual effects. I mean, they originally wanted Jet Propulsion Laboratory in Pasadena to do what would be that 2-minute animation, but it was going to take them 9 months and cost them $200,000 for a scene that was 2 minutes and 31 seconds long.
Oh my God.
And for every 10 seconds of the gunslinger's pixelated POV, it took them 8 hours to make. So it's just like, you have all of this stuff in this film, and there's all these great themes here. And not only that, they're actually pioneering special effects, yet they're throwing away so much. Oh, and then of course, it is one of the earliest references to a computer virus, when the chief supervisor makes the analogy in that staff meeting where he's like, oh, all of these malfunctions are happening across the park. It's kind of like a computer virus. It's like, oh my God, you guys just said something that now we take for granted, but such a big deal. But you guys are throwing this all away.
So here's a question that I have that I wanted to ask you. So the couple that was on the hovercraft, then they go to medieval world, right?
Yes.
Okay. So the guy's a scumbag. We don't know whether or not they have like an open marriage that includes sleeping with robots. So I'm not going to judge him for, what he tries to do with
It's 1983 according to the movie. Everything
is up for grabs. Morality is out the window.
You are willingly going to a world as a couple where you know that people are having sex with robots, and you may very well be having sex with robots.
Right. Yeah, it's maybe the most tragic part about this film is to think about it as the most horrifying thing would be to think of it as 1983 if Reagan never happened. No, okay. Who is his wife in the movie? Like, she's on the plane and but what do we see her once they're there? No, did she go to Roman world and just get cut out?
Which could be, yeah. I mean, is this a couple that just said, okay, we're just going to, kiss each other on the cheek, go our separate ways. You go enjoy a nice gangbang in Roman world, and I'm just going to go, screw a few maidens in medieval world. And then after a few days, because this is all we can afford, because, we have to change the water heater when we get back, right. We'll be all squared away.
You know who has to change the water heater, Mud? It's me. You'd never change it. No, but it's so...
This is why we came here, because you kept screwing the water heater, Jim. So you know what? Just screw the robot.
I think they just blew that completely. Like they just it was just the writer. Like, I don't even know what happened to the wife. It was, I didn't even really understand until Richard Benjamin was working his way through the medieval castle or dining room or whatever it was, being chased by Yul Brynner, and then you saw the Black Knight and the Queen sitting there immobile in their thrones or whatever it was. Then I was like, okay, so those are robots. Okay, that makes sense a little bit more now. But what happened to the wife? I mean, I was so confused.
But that's again, the movie just puts all of these good ideas out there. And even in that scene, he makes it into the medieval dungeon. There's this woman that seems to be captive, and he goes to give her water just to find out that she's a robot.
And she says no remember she says that no, and then he gives her the water anyways.
And she short circuits. So it's like, did another robot tie her up? Did a human, realizing what was happening, tie her up so that way, she couldn't kill him. It's like there's all of these things that are happening on this other layer of the movie where you're just like, I know there's deleted scenes in here, guys, but I need them just to make sense of the film.
Well, and that's the thing. That is the one scene that makes me think that they really did want people to think deeply about certain aspects of it, because there's no reason to have that scene there unless they want you to think about it. Like, oh, we created them, but we don't know if they're real or not.
Yes.
And now we're like forcing something onto them that they don't really want. And so that's why she dies or something. And also, that movie should have ended right there. There is no reason for that weird burned Yul Brynner thing to come back and then explode. That was just...
It is the precursor to every Jason, Freddy Krueger, and Michael Myers scene at the very end where they have that last scare where you think, the young teenagers are like, all right, finally, we killed the serial killer, just to have that last little boo come up. That's pretty much what it is.
Yeah, you're right. You're totally right. And also Terminator, too. Like the multiple deaths of the technology it's I didn't like it because I didn't like the jarring sort of like, oh, this is an interesting maybe concept about the robot being tied and now it's like burning up because of the water, and then, oh shit, there's the Yul Brynner thing for the 9th time. I didn't think it really worked from that standpoint. But yeah, it definitely is incredibly influential.
And like I said, abrupt, because they were trying to do something, and that whole scene with the captive robot that Benjamin helps, I mean, the fact that he's helping her is saying something about his character. And yeah, he ends up killing Yul Brynner because he's chasing after him. But even then, he just kind of falls on the steps in this sort of very introspective fashion, while the announcing thing is just kind of like on repeat. Like
Westworld, the ultimate resort. Boy, do we have a vacation for you.
You guys are trying to say something. Just it's okay. You can say it. We won't judge you. As a matter of fact, we kind of like it.
Yeah, yeah, and it's also in that scene. I'm wondering whether or not it's the audio that we're hearing with the recording. It's supposed to be an omnipresent sort of thing, harkening back to the beginning, or if it's supposed to be in his head, because it wasn't like watching like Persona, by like Bergman in the late 60s, where it's like, I'm confused because this is too much and my head's going to explode. This was like, I'm confused because this is poorly executed. So, and I like that. That was fine. It wasn't, it is a fascinating movie in the sense that you basically do get to see it done exponentially better in Jurassic Park. And
yes. I think you said it best. This is the student film, like proof of concept for Jurassic Park. And it's not until Jurassic Park actually happens that you say, okay, he took some of the best ideas in Westworld and maybe took them to that next logical step that we wanted him to take in Westworld.
Right. Yeah. And it makes sense too, because, Crichton was at that point in time had stopped by 93, 94 had stopped, directing and is just writing. And Spielberg, no matter of whatever anybody wants to say about him, when you're watching a Steven Spielberg movie, you are in the hands of a trusted filmmaker. Like, that guy knows how to manipulate. He knows how to shoot. He knows how to work with actors. He knows, he's, it's a lot different than Michael Crichton. But man, yeah, there were so many throwbacks to that where I was just like, that makes sense. That makes sense. But yeah, what a great movie to watch and just kind of like, tear apart. It was fun.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. And then, so it inspired a sequel, TV series, and now a remake from HBO. But I know this will be close to your heart, and I jotted this down immediately when I thought about talking with you about this episode. And it's, of course, Itchy and Scratchy.
Right. Yes, that's the other one, right? Oh, so great.
And they even have the scene where the professor comes in and he does the entire...
You've got to listen to me. Elementary chaos theory tells us that all robots will eventually turn against their masters and run amok in an orgy of blood and kicking and the biting with the metal teeth and the hurting and shoving.
How much time do we have, Professor?
Well, according to my calculations, the robots won't go berserk for at least 24 hours. Oh, I forgot to carry the wad.
Right. Now, that was something too. We didn't see that we didn't see the scientists being killed in Westworld, did we?
No, because the only comment they made is that the control room was on lockdown. So in my mind, I'm just picturing that they're sitting there basically witnessing the massacre of all the guests. I'm going to presume all the guests, from like the safety of this control room, just looking at these monitors, while some of these robots, like the Black Knight and the Queen, are shutting down or being killed, or who knows if there's some sort of extermination team that's running around in the background trying to take them out. But at this point, I'm thinking, okay, well, and even not, because there's the one tech that Benjamin runs into out in the desert who ends up getting killed by Yul Brynner, and he's just trying to get the hell out of there.
Right. I think that's good. Okay, here's how the movie ends if I was directing it. The movie ends with showing kind of an overview of the destruction and the death, and then obviously not all of the patrons of Delos died, so they're going back. They're coming back to be put on the hovercraft, because it's clearly a place where you can only get to by hovercraft, right? So they're going back, and what's left of the staff is getting people they get on the hovercraft. It goes through the people that are going back, and you see like that the Black Knight and the Queen, the robots, are on the hovercraft going back to the real world. That's how it ends for me.
Is that the pterodactyl flying in the air?
Exactly.
Away from Jurassic Island, going towards the mainland?
Right. The only difference being there's nowhere for the pterodactyl to go hide and be like a pigeon. So these two can go back to the real world, and they get to just act like humans. And
that's funny you said that, because in the sequel...
In 1972, Delos was open to the public. It was a computerized paradise where nothing could go wrong. But something did. Now, in 1976, Delos is about to reopen.
We have invested more than $1.5 billion to rebuild our equipment.
Its problems have been corrected.
We have replaced every circuit.
Its technology has been perfected.
The new Delos is not only the most fantastic resort in human history, it is also fail-safe.
And an incredible new world has been created. American International presents Future World.
Have you ever seen that one?
I have not seen it, and I really want to after watching this.
It's interesting because it goes in a different direction. So it's released in 76, so just 3 years after Westworld. And the tagline was, where you can't tell the mortals from the machines, even when you look in the mirror. So I feel like when I saw the tagline, I thought, okay, maybe Future World is going to fill in some of the blanks that were not addressed in Westworld, but developed by MGM, but in the middle of production, they decide to scrap it, and they go ahead with the production on Logan's Run instead of Future World. So then the film goes into turnaround, and they sell it to American International Pictures, who pays for the cost of development plus interest, and writer-director Crichton, not involved whatsoever in Future World, stars Peter Fonda, Blythe Danner, and Arthur Hill.
Jesus.
Yul Brynner's only in it. I mean, some pretty decent, actors at the time. And Yul Brynner's only in it for a short amount of time in sort of a cameo dream sequence. And it's like, again, Future World, other stuff. The first major feature film to use 3D computer generated imagery, where there's a part where they show an animated hand and face on a screen. Without ruining this for you and for anyone that hasn't seen it, it starts talking about exactly the idea that you set up. What if people were being replaced and they were just by these robots?
Wow.
And what would that world look like? So it's just kind of interesting, and it's because it was the first movie in 1979. It was the first film in modern American movie history to achieve a general theatrical release in communist China. This is Future World. I mean, it's like you're going out of the gate not with a Casablanca or like a Rio Bravo or something that would just be, just overtly American. It's just like, no, here's this world that basically says, so we think that in a sequel to a film that maybe robots are going to take over, and so much so that they're just going to replace us, and we're not going to know who's human and who's not. Enjoy.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Here are some evils of capitalism. Yes. That's really interesting. Wow.
Well, that one's well worth watching. The one that you should not bother with is the short run TV series for what was called Future World, based on everything we saw in Westworld.
It began with Westworld.
3, 2, 1, activate now.
A futuristic playground where people could act out their fantasies with robots so sophisticated it was impossible to tell them from humans. Suddenly, the robots changed, turned into the deadly servants of their creator, Simon Quaid, who took them beyond Westworld.
They only aired 3 of the 5 produced episodes. So they produced 5 of them, but the ratings are so poor they only air 3 of them. And the plot for that one, I'll spoil that one for you. It follows basically like the chief of security for the Delos Corporation as he hunts down a mad scientist, Quaid, who might as well, I guess, be like Cher or Madonna, Quaid, who's played by actor James Wainwright. But he's the one who actually designed the robots. And after everything that happened in Westworld and Future World, and he feels that they're not living up to their expectations and just being wasted on like leisure activities like sex and these basically role play scenarios, he starts like seizing control of that robot population and replacing government and political figures with robots. So essentially the mad scientist's plot where he's trying to take over the world.
Wow. That does not sound interesting at all.
Not interesting.
No, not. What do you think after, I think I was, in a strange way, I was more interested in what HBO's Westworld is going to be than I was after I saw this version.
Agreed, yes.
I think I don't even know what they can do with it that is going to make it something that I now want to watch.
I wonder if the one thing we've seen so far, and you've seen a few previews for the HBO one, I wonder if they're only going to focus on Westworld, because that's where I felt the movie was, I mean, outside of all these unanswered questions that we had, I wonder if they had just focused on Westworld and not delved into Roman or medieval world, if they would have been able to execute all of these, I don't know, higher level functions of thought with the script, if they had just not taken the time to just like go on those little asides to Roman and medieval world. So I think they're getting it seems right with the HBO remake, where they're just saying, you know what, it seems like it's an all Westworld environment with top-notch actors, pretty solid talent behind the creation of it. And maybe that's hopefully where they're going to get this right.
Yeah, I hope so. I think the reason I'm having that I will wait to watch the HBO one until someone tells me that it's worth watching is what you said. This, like with Westworld, there's all of these things that we bring to it that it maybe doesn't actually deserve. Like, at least the way the movie is executed, they might have been ideas left on the cutting room floor for various reasons, but we're thinking about it from the very beginning, like, the commercialization with the little like intro commercial, and then the concept of, people going back to it instead of like staying in their own reality. They want to live in this virtual reality. And then the violence aspect, the sex aspect, the dehumanizing aspect of it, the technology turning on its creator sort of aspect of it, the giving sexy robots water and them dying aspect of it. Like, all of those things, even if this movie ticks all of those boxes, it's not, I don't see why it's worth watching. Like, we already know what it would look like.
You wonder if the folks behind it, so you've got J.J. Abrams, who's producing it, Jonathan Nolan, who's Christopher Nolan's brother, but he co-wrote like Dark Knight Rises, Interstellar. You just wonder if all these things that we've been talking about, all the things you just mentioned, if they saw those same things and felt that Westworld was almost like an unfinished movie, and they decided, you know what, there's this great high concept here, we're going to try to do that other thing that maybe the movie couldn't do by virtue of, a short shooting budget, or maybe, like you said, it was a young cast, young director, so maybe they were not at that level of maturity, and they thought, all right, well, let's just take it to that next level. I guess we could hope.
Yeah, I actually am hoping at this point that, and I didn't know that Nolan was involved, the screenplay, the brother. He's fantastic. I'm wondering whether or not they're actually just using, it's almost going to be like a giant fake out, where it's like Westworld. So the people who are interested in seeing it are thinking very much like I'm thinking right now. Like, how are you going to, are you just going to explore these themes? Because we've kind of done that in a lot of stuff in 2000, like in the aughts. We've had this technology explosion and all of these things happen in communication and just computers and personal computers and blah, 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 blah. And so,
and we've had the benefit to that point. Like we've not only have we seen like the rise of technology, but then all the depictions of technology gone awry, like you mentioned, like with Terminator, but we've seen like Stepford Wives and all of that, where it's like, technology so much so that it becomes human looking. And then of course it, turns against us. It's like, but that's by virtue of hindsight, I guess.
Yeah. And so what I'm hoping is that they are aware of that, and they're literally just going to turn the whole thing on its head somehow that I can't think of. And that will make me be like really interested in it. But
at least they've got the actors for it. I mean, Anthony Hopkins, Ed Harris, who plays the gunslinger, Evan Rachel Wood, James Marsden, Jeffrey Wright. It seems like Jeffrey Wright is like the chief engineer, and Anthony Hopkins is more like the creator. And they've shown a few. There seem to be more robots in this than were in Westworld, and I would imagine they will have a character or two characters that kind of embody the roles that Benjamin and Brolin played. They're the audience that kind of takes us through this without having the hovercraft exposition.
Right.
We're a slightly more sophisticated audience now than maybe back in 73.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering if they're going to dig more into like the why was this created and how did it get to the point where it's basically used for amusement. And
I'm interested to see where it goes. I don't know if I'll invest time in it until I hear some like people who I trust saying that it's worth.
There are no suppositions by the audience now. No one knows Westworld. They have to be told that it was a movie from 1973, let alone that it had a sequel, let alone that it had a short-lived TV series. At this point, you're just like, you just heard J.J. Abrams and Nolan in HBO, and you're like, oh, those other things exist? Oh, I guess. That's fine.
Right, exactly.
Chad and I will talk about what the real Westworld would look like and also make up a few worlds of our own in a few seconds. But in the meantime, if you are listening on iTunes, please take a moment to rate and review. Just search for the Fan to Fan podcast, go under reviews, enter a star rating, or write a review if you have a second or two, and click send. That's how easy it is. I will greatly appreciate it. Thanks. So I had some I thought we could have a little fun here with what the real Westworld, Roman world, and medieval world would look like. So I just jotted down a few notes if you don't mind me sharing.
Please.
I wrote the not so wild, wild west, which would absolutely not be the heroic, gritty cowboy depiction of a Clint Eastwood or a John Wayne in Tombstone or Deadwood, like we've seen in TV and movies, but rather that daily cowboy life was nowhere near as violent as we think. If you actually combined all the shooting deaths for all the cattle towns from 1870 to 1885, your magic large number would be 45. And that it would be by far less romantic and more prone to like smallpox and STDs than you would die in a gunfight. The second most common cause of arrest in the Old West was illegally carrying a firearm. And bank robberies were virtually unheard of. So this would be the not so wild, wild west of Westworld if you were actually going to that real place.
So you'd basically be paying like the equivalent to like $9,000 or $10,000 to like go sit on your porch, get syphilis, and like, you know, a la the Gene Hackman character in The Unforgiven, like try to create like a roof that doesn't leak.
And don't forget, you would be actually shitting in a ditch.
Right. Shitting. Right. Wonderful. So what's you have the Roman world?
So instead of having the entire wenches lining up with some guy in a toga or you know, feeding grapes and drinking all night before having a little nocturnal fun, you know, in reality, the privileged was about only 5% of Rome's population. The remaining 95% were living at above or below poverty level. So if you're paying in Westworld money $1,000 a day, you better be in that 5% unless you upgrade to the, you know, maybe bronze package. But no palaces. Nice. You have neighborhoods that are cramped, squalid, and dangerous, overcrowding, poor sanitation, poor nutrition. You're gonna get malaria, tuberculosis, typhoid. And if you have a nice little nightly stroll, you're probably going to get mugged, or you're going to get hit with a chamber pot that's thrown out a window.
You'd also have to, the first thing you do is you'd get off the hovercraft, get on your little tram, and then they take you to the Roman world, and you immediately have to go to school to learn how to create aqueducts.
Yeah. You are actually, the second you get off the tram, you're just put in slave shackles.
Right, that's exactly right.
You are now owned by this robot, and this will be your entire experience.
Yeah, right. And if you're good enough at being a slave, you get to be one of the
raped or killed in a gladiator fight,
or you get to be one of the eunuchs for Biggest Dickus.
There, and you don't get that money back.
No, it's non-refundable. No. You know what you're getting into.
So medieval world, outside of all the fun stuff like dysentery, smallpox, typhoid, which just keeps coming up, influenza, mumps, and of course, as the kids call it, the Black Plague. If you were traveling, you'd also die from being, you'd freeze to death, food poisoning, or you'd go hungry. And, you know, let's not forget things like famine, being Jewish or Muslim, where, you know, you're going to only get killed for being a heretic, or you're going to be executed or massacred in Inquisition. So that one is a much more fun world.
Yeah, that sounds just like a load of laughs.
Yes.
You know, basically.
And well worth $1,000 a day.
Oh, yeah. And how weird also, since you've said this, is it that all of these worlds are just earlier forms of Western civilization? That's very weird. Like, why can't you go back to Africa or Asia? You know, like, why does it have to be based? That's really interesting. I didn't even think about that. Like, I'd rather go back to China, you know, at, you know, 0, you know, AD than I would want to go to like the medieval times.
Maybe they were just working off the sets they had left over from Ben-Hur. Right. That's what they were stuck with. They're like, yeah, no, we're not going to China. We're not going to Australia. Just use the sets from The Robe. That's what we're going to do.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Hey, look, there's Richard Burton's liver. That's fantastic. Wow, hidden in the closet.
That's right. So I came up with 3 other worlds that if you did not want to go to those worlds, maybe these 3 other worlds might be more your destination. So you'll have to tell me if you might enjoy these.
Okay.
So the first world would be East LA in the 90s world. if you know, this is not like the East LA where you saw in like Stand and Deliver, Blood In, Blood Out, or Born in East LA, where you'd have to deal with, you know, fun issues like smog, earthquakes, riots, drug wars, gang activity, violence, racism, and police brutality. The lack of affordable housing. So since, of course, you're paying for this great accommodation, and the lack of quality health care, and of course, drought and downtown traffic.
I tell you, you know what? If I can go out on calls with Robert Duvall and Sean Penn, I'm in on that one. I'm in.
Don't you want to see the cheesy commercial for that one, and having the guy come off the hovercraft as he goes to do the interview, and she's like, "Hey, what's your name?" "Oh, my name's John." "And where were you?" "I was in East LA in the 90s world." Right. That explains the teardrop tattoo under your eye.
Right, exactly. Oh, that's awesome.
And I think you might enjoy this world. You may actually want to go to this world, Newsroom World. So not the glorious world we see in Network, Goodbye, Good Luck, His Girl Friday, or, of course, Anchorman. But you would now run a newsroom in a landscape where print is dying, and you are now answering to an entertainment division. You have to compete with blogs and social media as viable sources of news. You have to manage a room full of varying misfit personalities that struggle with stress, delusions of grandeur, alcohol, drug abuse, rampant divorce, constant insecurity, and you have to fight every day to maintain your journalistic integrity with diminishing resources, reduced talent, and a fickle audience.
Right, and that's an excellent synopsis. It's also in that world, if you're anyone except for the main anchorman, you are a pallid version of a West Wing character. That's the other thing too. Like you're either Josh or you're Toby or you're CJ.
And heaven forbid you're a woman over 40.
Right, exactly.
So the last world, football or NFL world, where as we have the football season coming up here, where 1.6% of college football players make it to the pros. You get the insecurity of playing or being traded, having to pack up your family to a new city every few months for your long average 3.3-year career. You have to maintain strict nutrition and physical standards. You're susceptible to injury and concussions, future mental and physical conditions. Of course, you've got to take care of your growing entourage, be scammed by deceptive agents, and you have to fund financial money pits that never come to fruition, let alone alcohol, drug abuse, rampant divorce, constant insecurity.
Well, that would be an interesting world. I think that I don't think I'd want to be that world, but if I was, I'd want it guaranteed that I played on a team that then 25 years later, they did a 30 for 30 episode about. So.
That's an extra. That's more than $1,000 a day, Chad.
That would make sense. No, the football world is the least appealing to me in that one, but I think it would make a heck of a show. I'd watch that.
It would be like fantasy football, the Westworld version.
Right. It might be a fantasy world, but you took all those hits to the head, so those are falling. Excellent.
So I guess this is the ultimate question. If Delos did exist and there was a Westworld, Roman world, medieval world, would you go?
No, not a chance. No, I don't. I think that the problem with the film is that it in no way made me want to go to these places. I was only interested in these characters because I liked the actors and I kind of was fascinated by just what was happening, but never once did I think like, yeah, put me on that weird hovercraft with the guy with the glasses driving it, and then I'll show up and get put on a golf cart that's a certain color, and then I'll go to a place that I don't really want to go to. I never had the urge to go to Delos. That said, I like the movie.
What if there was Australia World?
Well, I'd go to Australia World, of course, just to get eaten by a shark. And I just, there are worlds I would go to that I would definitely be interested in. Northern British Columbia gold rush world sort of thing. Like that's something I would be interested in. I would even be kind of interested in East LA world in the early 90s, just because I thought that was a brilliant concept. And that would just be kind of fun.
And you'd fit in so well.
Oh my goodness. Hey, look, it's a 6'3" Viking. Jeez, that guy can rap.
I was just thinking you enjoy wearing flannel, so you would you might be okay.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. There are worlds I would want to go to. None of the worlds there, I guess that's a good way of looking at it from a positive aspect. None of these worlds intrigued me as in Chad would want to go to them, yet I didn't hold that against the movie, I guess. I didn't think to myself, I'm not interested in this because I don't want to go there. I was just interested in the concept.
I almost wish they had done more, but I agree 100% with you. It's like the concept is great. Execution isn't there. It's kind of fun to watch it, having not seen it in so long. But Yeah, the whole time it's just kind of like I just feel like it's the unfinished movie. Like they were not able to take it to that other place that we want it to go to.
Right. And also, when you pointed it out, I didn't really catch that it was supposed to be 1983, that the present of the film was 1983. But the fact that I probably saw it in 1983 also makes me kind of be like, oh, that's interesting, because the world was nothing like that in 1983. And so, yeah, that's just, I don't know. It is an interesting concept. It's not particularly well executed. That's Westworld.
Yep. Yeehaw. That's it for this episode. Tune in next time for more fan-to-fan conversations on the Fan-to-Fan podcast. Thanks for listening.
Her brain kept alive by experimental science, by a man whose abnormal passions inspired him to try the impossible.
I brought her back. She'll live and I'll get her another body.